Emerge from the darkness, blacker than darkness. Purify that which is impure. In this video, we'll be talking about Gojo Satoru, the Sheathed Sword, the strongest sorcerer and probably the most impressionable character created by Gege Akutami in the Jujutsu Kaisen Manga series. We'll be talking about why, even though he is one of the most OP anime characters out there, everyone still loves him. His character is so well written that on the surface, you could fall for his beautiful physique, strength, humor, and great taste in movies. But if you also paid good attention, you could reach into the infinite depth of his character and also be impressed. And this is why I'm here at Pangolo, to give you all the details of his character and history, even beyond what is in the story. And by details, that includes manga details. Don't get mad at me, anime-onlies. Even Gojo has a habit of spoiling movies. Gojo Satoru's life. Gojo Satoru was born in 1989, on the 7th of December, and is a member of the Gojo family, one of the big three sorcerer families. When Gojo was born, it was said that the balance of the world was altered. So much so that a bounty was placed on his head, and yet he survived. In fact, one look from Gojo would send his pursuers into hiding, only coming out again almost 3 decades later, after he was sealed. This fear for Satoru was mostly due to his 6 eyes and limitless techniques, 2 techniques that he inherited from his clan. Kinda like how some of us might inherit lactose intolerance. Don't feel bad though. Remember, we've survived in the Milky Way galaxy all this time. Seriously though. So much power and fear from those around him helped to equip Satoru with a very high self-esteem and superiority complex. No, a god complex. This is clear as he would call himself the strongest and call other people weak or small fry. And this includes some of the skilled assassins looking to claim the bounty on young Satoru. Due to this childhood, he grew up to become somewhat egoistic. No, very egoistic. He also looked down on everyone, including elders, with his prime target for disrespectful remarks being Principal Gaguganji at Jujutsu High. However, it was also at Jujutsu High that everything changed. To be precise, at the Star Phasma Vessel arc, where he almost gets killed by Fushiguro Toji, Megumi's dad. This encounter was triggered by the assignment given by Yaga Masamichi to Satoru and Geto Suguru, Goju's best friend. The assignment, which was to protect the Star Plasma Vessel, Riko Amanai, was unsuccessful, as Toji soundly defeated Satoru and Geto before killing Amanai. Eventually, Satoru kills Toji and ascends to greater heights. After this encounter, Gojo begins training seriously for probably the first time in his life, and within a year, Geto acknowledges to himself that Satoru is now the strongest, as he had always claimed to be. Eventually, the two friends fall out, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Soon enough, Satoru graduates and decides to become a teacher at Jujutsu High. Satoru encounters Yuta Akatsu, a high school student who was seemingly possessed by Riko Orimoto, a cursed spirit of his childhood love interest, who Geto referred to as the Queen of Curses. Yuta was to be executed because of the threat he possessed with the power of Rika. However, Gojo would intervene to rescue him. Geto saw Yuta as an opportunity as he believed that controlling Rika would enable him to defeat Satoru. But ultimately, Yuta defeated Geto himself before Gojo dealt the final blow to his former ally. Moving forward, Gojo would also encounter the King of Curses, Sukuna, in the body of Itadori. He mentors Itadori and once again saves him from execution at the hands of the crazed old geezers at Jujutsu headquarters, as Gojo calls them. Satoru sends his 3 first-year students of Itadori, Megumi, and Nobara Kugazaki on seemingly easy missions that eventually always end up being deadly. It all works out though, as they all become really strong. Even when he gets sealed by Kenjaku, also known as Pseudo Geto, or Brain, Gojo reaffirms his faith in the strength of his students, and currently, his students are on the verge of breaking his seal with a back seal obtained from Master Tengen, also known as the Star, the same sorcerer who was supposed to fuse with the Star Plasma Vessel, and he kinda looks weird. I can't quite put my finger on it. Gojo's abilities. Gojo Satoru is everyone's dad in Jujutsu Kaisen. He is, quite literally, but unlike Mark Grayson from Invincible, Satoru takes almost no L's. You just can't touch this guy, as the gap between him and everyone else is infinite. Not kidding. You actually can't touch Gojo. And yes, it's because the space between him and everyone else is infinite. Confused? Well, you probably aren't. You've heard him say this in the anime and the manga, but what does it mean? You see, Satoru himself has referenced what the infinity means in the manga when he talks about Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles and the tortoise is a paradox devised by the Greek philosopher Zeno. It is one of Zeno's 4 paradoxes that seek to establish the motion in the space-time continuum is nothing but an illusion. The paradox says that if a tortoise is given a head start against Achilles in a race, Achilles would need to cover the distance of the starting line to where the tortoise currently is. It says that before Achilles gets there, the tortoise must have moved a distance no matter how little, so now Achilles has to cover that new distance. The tortoise creates a new distance no matter how small by moving once again. And you could repeat this an infinite number of times, which in theory means that Achilles will never meet the tortoise. Basically, Zeno seeks to establish that due to the infinite number of fractions between a distance, motion is not possible. However, you've covered the space between your thumb and my subscribe button, so Zeno obviously doesn't know what he's talking about, am I right? But then, there's Gojo Satoru. Born with a limitless power that enables him to warp the space-time continuum, Gojo is able to make this paradox a reality by increasing the space around him to its infinite potential of fractions. And I believe it also helps him to get around as quickly as he can in a fashion that looks like teleportation. Because if he can manipulate the fractions of space around him to increase infinitely, he can also warp it in the opposite direction, bringing him much closer to his desired target. In the very first episode, where he encounters Sukuna, you can see that this is a likely explanation, as Sukuna initially acknowledges that Satoru is fast, before later admitting that it was something other than speed. Gojo Satoru also reverses his blue and red techniques, which are similar to Pain's almighty pull and push. The blue creates a center of gravity similar to a black hole, that pulls objects towards it at an atomic level. Reversing the technique would give you the opposite effect of pushing things away, but when Satoru combines the 2 techniques, what we get is hollow purple, a technique that will disintegrate any matter within its space into nothing. Gojo's other inherited technique, aside from Limitless, is the 6 eyes. We have not currently gotten the details of this technique. However, it seems to work perfectly with Limitless. 6 eyes seems to be the heightening of Satoru's senses, since he can sense almost anybody in space, even Toji Fushiguro, who had no cursed energy. In his fight with Mount Fuji over here, and his fight in the Shibuya Incident arc, Gojo activates his domain expansion, Unlimited Void. In this metaphysical space, both curses and humans are forced into numbness, where they can receive every information and stimuli in the universe without limit. Unless one is touching Gojo, they will not be immune to its effect, and humans could die if it even lasts a second. This is why in the Shibuya Incident arc, he lets the domain last for just 0.2 seconds, leading us back to how he can mess with fractions of space-time. Gojo also has regenerative powers that he activated on the brink of death after fighting Toji. He explains that it is multiplication of negative energy to create positive energy that enabled him to activate the reverse curse technique and heal himself. He also states that coming into contact with the core of cursed energy gave him his enlightenment. Gojo's character. Speaking of enlightenment, that is just one of the many meanings of Satoru, which incidentally is also the root of the Zen Buddhist word, Satori, as well as being related to Satoshi, the name of Bitcoin's creator. Satoru could also mean to know, to understand, to attain spiritual awakening, wisdom, and philosophy. Gojo also shares a common ancestor with Yuta, called Michizane Sugawara. Michizane was a real person that actually lived in Kyoto, Japan during the Brian era. He is one of the 3 vengeful spirits in Jujutsu Kaisen, like Sukuna. Michizane is revered as the god of learning, and so everything points to Satoru being positioned as a very perceptive character even beyond his 6 eyes. When talking about Gojo's inspiration in an interview, Gege Akutami said, "I wanted to create the strongest character that can easily be distinguished." Well, he succeeded, and Gojo himself acknowledges his might over and over and over, most notably with the famous words, "Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one." These same words were uttered by the Buddha, where he was said to be pointing towards the sky and the earth, just like Gojo. But it also has a very similar feel to Sasuke Aizen's declaration that he would stand in the heavens to take the place of God as he ascends with the Menos in the Soul Society arc of the Bleach anime. And just like Aizen, Gojo feels he is very powerful and wants to change the way the world of sorcerers work, even to the point of suggesting killing all the higher-ups. However, Gojo is more akin to Urahara, as he seems to prefer changing the system from the inside out, through, wait for it, education. That's right, back to enlightenment once again. Satoru sees himself as the strongest, however, He wants to raise students whom he hopes can be stronger than him, with a good head on their shoulders. This is quite different from how Satoru started out, however. He was initially only interested in the strong, and felt that weak people existed as a disturbance for the strong. On the contrary, Gojo Satoru initially believed that the strongest existed to protect the weak. However, the encounter with Riko Amanai, the Star Plasma Vessel, left a deep impression on Satoru, and in no time he was telling Geto about them protecting Amanai, since they were the strongest. This is a different view than the one he had recently held, since he was appealing to Geto's view of the strongest protecting the weak. In a matter of days, however, Geto would also change his view to believing that the weak humans, or monkeys as he called them, should all be killed. Monkey was the word used by Fushiguro Toji to describe himself when he dusted down Geto and Gojo and killed Amanai. "You guys, with all your powers, lost to a monkey like me," he said. Toji is one of the best characters from Gege in this show, and these words from him cut a wound deep in both Gojo and Geto's minds. Remember when I said Gojo takes almost no L's? Well, Fushiguro Toji is almost. In the course of their fight, Gojo could not track Toji, even with his 6 eyes technique, mostly because he had been worn down. However, immediately after the encounter, Gojo started training profusely and wearing bands that completely covered his eyes. This way, he could fully experience people without his powers. Likely because, although he was very powerful, the only people he lost to were weak people. Not just Toji, but Amanai as well, because the death of Amanai impacted Gojo much more than he expected. And we can see that now, because whenever cases like Amanai have arisen, he breaks the law to save those people. The 2 notable examples are Yuta and Yuji. And despite being able to kill all the higher-ups and rewrite the Sorcerer Society as he wishes, Satoru decides to let people come into their own strength and awakening. And he does this through educating them. When he meets with Geto, after who had just committed terrible crimes, Geto asks him a question. "Are you the strongest because you're Gojo Satoru? Or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest?" Very similar to Cap asking Tony Stark what he was without the suit in Marvel's Avengers. And Gojo replied, "Billionaire, playboy, philanthropist." Nope, I'm just kidding. The truth is, Gojo said nothing. Was he who he was because of his gifts? Or was he who he was because of his impact? Eventually, Gojo admits to Yaga that he can only save those who want to be saved. This is Gojo's admission that he would not force people into a world that they may not understand or even accept. This is Gojo's way of saying he wants people to have their own free will, even though, as Geto rightly pointed out, he could take it away. This makes Gojo Satoru a truly powerful character, because power is best imagined as a sheathed sword. This is the ability to do and yet not do. Even in other anime with really strong characters, these powerful people face the same dilemma. Probably the best example of this is Thor's from Vinland Saga, who repeatedly teaches his annoyingly stubborn kid, Thorfinn, that a true warrior needs no sword. Satoru's blindfold is much more than just limiting or training his senses. Like Lady Justice, who wears a blindfold and stands as a moral authority, Gojo's blindfold is also symbolic in the same way, since he is all-powerful and decides for his world what is the best way to go. Wrap up. It's lonely at the top, and Gojo Satoru has been at the top all his life. Understanding this problem is why he teaches Yuta that he needs to learn to master his powers, so that he can escape loneliness and be with friends. And it's clear that despite his occasional condescending attitude and his tendency to be goofy in the worst possible times, Gojo Satoru cares deeply about his comrades and about humanity as a whole. His power level makes him see things quite differently, and despite his ability to hurt a lot of people to build his own world, he remains a sheathed sword. That's it for the video, guys. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. It really helps when you do that. Click the video on the screen, and I'll see you there.